X and YouTube as well, and I'm just now realizing that because my dumbass computer crashed the first time I tried to go live today, now I have to fix my stupid camera settings that reset themselves every damn time the computer restarts. So let me just do that real quick, guys. I'm already working on it. This is unbelievably freaking annoying to have to deal with. All right, there we go. Now the camera should look normal. We are back. Sorry about the technical difficulties earlier, guys. The damn computer crashed not long after I went live. But it looks like we're back. Andy Joanne, Subpack Vet, Twin Crier, good to see you guys out there as always. Putsy Woo, same to you, my friend. With that being said, we have a pretty good pile of news to get through today, and if we end up finishing at a decent time, then I'll probably grab at least a few from yesterday's prep. And we'll cover all that stuff as well. So anyways, let's go ahead and jump into the news of the day, guys. Over at thegatewaypundit.com, we have our first story of the night. Fulton County's 315,000 admission, and it's referring to 315,000 illegal votes, essentially, goes well beyond just unsigned poll tapes, including illegal tabulation, rule violations, and open records deception. So more about how the 2020 election in Fulton County, Georgia was completely and utterly freaking broken. Redneck Shark, good to see you out there as well. So here we go. During a December 9th hearing before the State Election Board, the attorney for Fulton County's Board of Registration and Elections, Ann Brumbaugh, did not dispute the fact that over 315,000 ballots in Fulton County were missing signatures on the poll tapes as required by Georgia Comp R and Regs. I don't know, guys. What the fuck? This was in response to a complaint submitted to the SEB in March 2022, 33 months prior to the SEB hearing. That should be Georgia Comp. I don't know what the hell Comp stands for. R and Regulations. I don't know. Rules and Regulations 183-1-14.02, 15, and OCGA Section 21-2-483H, if anybody wants the specifics there. So, in addition to the poll tapes being unsigned, another egregious and concerning discovery was made. The poll tapes didn't even come from the ones at the precincts where the ballots were originally scanned at, as required by Georgia election rules. Prior to the December 9th, 2025 admission, and even the March 2022 complaint, Fulton County had a different response. In an open records request submitted by the Election Oversight Group for the poll tape records that were subject to the March 2022 complaint, Fulton County Attorney Steve Rosenberg responded in writing, so there was a record of our response, quote-unquote. In the response, Rosenberg states that the zero tapes are printed on paper that resembles old-style receipts, and that they fade even more when handled. He then states that they've received a number of requests for these and other poll tapes, and that over time, the zero tapes have become almost completely faded, and then says that he provided what they maintain and can locate that still has some printing on it. Then he claims that the consolation is that the Secretary of State's office maintains the originals and says that a request should be sent to their office. The response from Kevin Moncla, who co-authored the March 2022 complaint with David Cross and also co-authored SEB complaint 2023-2025, which is still under investigation, makes valid arguments using Rosenberg's own admissions. If Fulton County is not in possession of the originals because the Secretary of State's office allegedly maintains them, then the requested documents would not be subject to the fading claims, as photocopies are printed with toner and not subject to fading. However, as the response points out, the Secretary of State clarified that they do not possess the original zero tapes. State law requires the originals be deposited with the Superior Court. Further, Fulton County attempted to charge $10,000 for this request. From the response to Rosenberg, quote, as you have had a number of requests, which I suspect were through the portal, it indicates that you also have electronic copies of the documents at issue. The same also raises the question why your office has quoted me a price of $10,000 to produce documents that you have already produced, as the open records law states that those should be free of charge. In Georgia, under Rule 183-1-14-.02, 14, and 15, registrars shall deliver all the ballot scanners used for advance voting to the election superintendent or the tabulating center where the seals are to be verified as not being tampered with. After the seals are verified, the election superintendent or tabulating center personnel shall open each ballot scanner and turn on the power. They then compare the election counters of the ballot scanners with the absentee ballot recap form to verify there are no discrepancies. The election personnel shall cause each ballot scanner to print a minimum of 3 tapes showing the vote totals as cast on that ballot scanner. If there are no discrepancies, 3 witnesses shall sign each of the tapes or shall write on the tapes the reason why they will not sign the tapes. But this is not what happened. Instead, Fulton County used just 16 tabulators at the English Street warehouse rather than the 148 tabulators that scanned the ballots at the precincts. The rule requires that the poll tapes be printed from the tabulator that the votes were cast on. An itemized list of the serial numbers of the tabulators used shows that 9 tabulator serial numbers represented more than 10 closing tapes. 2 tabulators had 16 tapes attributed to them, and 3 tabulators had 15 tapes attributed to them. None of them were the original tabulators used in the early voting process to scan the ballots as required by law. Of the 148 tabulators used at the early voting precincts, 136 of them are documented as being closed on just 16 tabulators that were not deployed to precincts but rather stored at the English Street warehouse. The remaining tabulators have no record of existing and account for over 20,000 ballots. Below is an example of the Fulton County closing tapes for the tabulator with serial number AAFA JIV0104. Notice that the tabulator ID, tabulator name, voting location, and opened, closed, printed time and dates are different for each, but the serial number and the protective counter are the same, which essentially is impossible unless someone is screwing with this stuff. In total, the Election Oversight Group found that 15 poll closing tapes had the same serial number as the tapes above. Those precincts were, and then of course they list them here in a table. The poll tapes below from Floyd County show how they should look, with the opening tape on the left having matching fields and showing a direct relation between ballots counted and the increment in the protective counter. Fulton County followed up with another email explaining that the reason they are mostly unsigned, I have learned, is that there was not a requirement from the Secretary of State that they be signed at the time. There has since been put in place a requirement that they be signed. The argument that the rule was not in place at that time is inaccurate. Rule 183-1-14-.0215 was in place for the November 2020 election. As mentioned earlier, the SEB rule that regulates how the poll tapes are handled was Georgia Comp Rules and Regulations 183-1-14-.0215. I don't know why they keep having to freaking repeat that, which was originally passed in 2003 when Georgia adopted the direct recording equipment voting machines. However, the rule defining the use and process for optical scanners was necessary because of the purchase of the Dominion voting system. It was adopted in January 2020 and became effective in March 2020. Had it not been, there would have been no applicable rules for the 2020 election. However, the statute specifically requires the tapes to be certified, and it does include those for advance voting. The December 9th, 2025 admission by Fulton County that revealed at least 315,000 ballots lacking required closing poll tape signatures was just the tip of the iceberg. The improper closing of the polls on just 16 machines, none of which were deployed to advance voting precincts, raises even more concern. It should also be noted that Dominion voting staff were being paid $2,000 per person per day to work during this same period at that same facility where they had earlier conducted logic and accuracy testing after a reported COVID outbreak. So there it is, guys, once again from thegatewaypundit.com. More details on how in Fulton County, Georgia, during the 2020 election, nothing seems to have been done by the books. It looks like it's just a completely and totally unlawful administration of that election. So I will keep you guys updated. Frankly, this should be leading to criminal investigations. The DOJ should probably start looking into this, and hopefully they already are. But yeah, we'll keep you guys updated on whatever ends up happening next. Hopefully something, instead of just, us finding out about this stuff through articles and then absolutely nothing happening because of it, right? So there it is. We're looking for, we've got the transparency here. That's good, but now we want the actual accountability. So That's what I'm going to be looking for. Next one here comes from the National Pulse. Calls for Walz' resignation intensify amid Somali fraud scandal. And yes, the Somali fraud scandal over the past week or so has completely exploded. So, Minnesota Governor Tim Walz is facing mounting calls to resign amid revelations of widespread fraud in state-administered federal programs. Federal authorities have alleged that fraud schemes targeting these programs could involve billions in losses for the American taxpayer, with many cases reportedly involving members of the Somali community. And yeah, apparently this is so bad, I've heard it from at least one place, that the amount of fraud basically, it is the same, or basically wipes out the entire GDP of the state of Minnesota, right? I don't know why it took me so long to spit that out, but essentially, yeah, the fraud is so bad that it basically undoes the positive impact on the economy from the entire GDP of Minnesota. It's almost as if, as a result of this fraud, they don't have a GDP. The scandal has prompted criticism from both parties. On December 19th, 5 Republican members of the Minnesota House and Senate released a joint statement calling for Walz to resign, declaring for the good of the state, Governor Walz should step aside. U.S. Representative Tom Emmer, a Minnesota Republican and House Majority Whip, told the media he should resign. He's a total embarrassment. Emmer stressed the concerns about these problems had been flagged for years. Fraud cases have resulted in more than 60 convictions of Somali background criminals, with Minnesota's acting U.S. attorney having suggested that more than $9 billion in federal funds could have been misused since 2018. Notably, whistleblowers have said they flagged issues with the Walz administration years ago, but no action was taken, and they were threatened with retaliation. Reports indicate that Somalis account for 89% of those charged across these fraud investigations. Nevertheless, Walz has stood by his administration's efforts, even claiming that he has worked for years to crack down on fraud, which is a ridiculous statement to be making in the middle of all this, honestly. Republican Senator Marsha Blackburn of Tennessee posted on X, "It's absurd for Tim Walz to dismiss the corruption that has happened right under his nose. He should resign. Minnesotans deserve better." The issue has emerged as a key topic in Minnesota politics, and honestly national politics as well, potentially affecting Walz's prospects for re-election in 2026. So far, he appears intent on appeasing the Somali community, even suggesting that ongoing probes into their activities by citizen journalists have white supremacist motivations. Federal Bureau of Investigation Director Kash Patel previously confirmed that federal assets have been deployed to Minnesota to tackle the fraud scandal. And hopefully what that ends up resulting in is the arrest of the individuals who have allowed this to happen, working in the state government. And that includes, honestly, Governor Tim Walz. It certainly looks like his administration has intentionally looked the other way for a very long time on this. They thought they could get away with it. They thought that it would never be a big story. Well, now that's very much changing, and it's changing very, very quickly. So I don't know, guys. Maybe, just maybe, this will grow. The scandal will grow to the extent that it may force the resignation of Tim Walz. I don't want to get my hopes up or your guys' hopes up over that, but honestly, I do think that it is a possibility moving forward. So there is that. Subpack Vet says, not to mention all the other illegal aliens, this is just one tiny part of the overall fraud. And indeed, my friend, we have a lot on, the so-called cultural enrichment, right, of, bringing crazy people to the United States today. So yeah, we'll get into that stuff. Moving on to the next one here, which comes from the National Pulse. Bondi confirms 85 Somalis charged and 60 convicted in this Minnesota fraud scandal. So a nice overall update on, how the law enforcement angle of this is going. Attorney General Pam Bondi has announced that 85 people of Somali descent are among those charged in a continuing fraud probe in Minnesota. She noted that the Department of Justice has been examining the Democrat-run state for months, with more prosecutions anticipated. Mr. Tizo, good to see you out there. In a next post, Bondi praised citizen journalist Nick Shirley for revealing the magnitude of the fraud in Minnesota during Democrat Governor Tim Walz's tenure. Nick Shirley's work has helped show Americans the scale of fraud in Tim Walz's Minnesota, Bondi wrote. So far, we have charged 98 individuals, 85 of Somali descent, and more than 60 have been found guilty in court. Shirley recently shared a video featuring multiple daycare centers in Minnesota that reportedly received millions in federal funding, yet appeared to have no children present. One example was the Quality Learning Center. They totally messed up trying to spell the word learning, which is hilarious, honestly, in South Minneapolis, whose misspelled sign has become emblematic of the scandal. Federal Bureau of Investigation Director Kash Patel confirmed an active investigation, pointing out that the Bureau had already boosted staffing and resources in Minnesota before the issue gained widespread attention on social media. Patel stressed the FBI is focused on breaking up major fraud operations that target federal programs. So there it is, guys, once again from thenationalpulse.com. And of course, I will continue to keep you guys updated on the fraud scandal. It's actually spreading to some other states as well, Washington and Ohio. But first, we have another Minnesota story here from the National Pulse. The Minnesota GOP wants Somali fraudsters denaturalized and deported. And I'm pretty sure most of the nation wants these people denaturalized and deported. Honestly, you'd be kind of crazy to not want this after learning about what they've been doing here. So Republican House Majority Whip Tom Emmer has advocated for strict immigration consequences, including revoking citizenship and deportation for people in Minnesota's Somali community implicated in fraud schemes. Send them home, he stated on social media. If they're here illegally, deport them immediately. If they're naturalized citizens, revoke their citizenship and deport them quickly thereafter. If we need to change the law to do that, I will. Our nation will not tolerate those who take advantage of our charity and refuse to assimilate into our culture. The North Star State is facing a major scandal involving industrial-scale fraud, centered on programs like Feeding Our Future, which diverted hundreds of millions, potentially billions in funds intended for children's meals and other services amid the COVID-19 crisis. Authorities report that the majority of those indicted to date are Somali or of Somali heritage. Notably, Minnesota hosts the nation's largest Somali community. The Federal Bureau of Investigation has increased its presence in the state, with Director Kash Patel noting that probes revealed extensive fraud and that many who were involved in the scheme are being referred to immigration officials for possible further denaturalization and deportation proceedings where eligible. On Truth Social, President Donald J. Trump recently posted Minnesota under Governor Tim Walz as a hub of fraudulent money laundering activity. I am, as President of the United States, hereby terminating effective immediately the Temporary Protected Status Program for Somalis in Minnesota. Somali gangs are terrorizing the people of that great state and billions of dollars are missing. Send them back to where they came from. It's over. So there it is, guys, once again from thenationalpulse.com. And yeah, hopefully this, this massive fraud scandal, not only in Minnesota, but also it's spreading across the United States. A lot of people finding that this is actually happening all over the place. I think that, it certainly can be used as an opportunity to move the Overton window on the, even the legal immigration in the country. Because a lot of people have been saying that we need to reduce legal immigration and not just illegal immigration. And that's actually something that I totally agree with. I think that we should be probably putting a pause, an absolute pause on all immigration into the United States, probably for a period of at least 10 years. But that's just me. But anyways, as far as all the people involved in this fraud that are immigrants, I agree with the lawmaker here. I think it is absolutely the best way to ensure that this fraud doesn't get worse and actually reduces by basically threatening denaturalization and deportation for anybody involved in anything like this. So there it is, once again, guys, from thenationalpulse.com. More consequences usually means a little bit more deterrence for criminal activity. Next one here from the National Pulse. Ex-agent accuses prosecutors of burying Minnesota daycare fraud investigation. And yeah, this is honestly, I think, where the DOJ and the FBI should start really digging into. Who was involved in allowing this to happen by looking the other way, right? Who was complicit in this, and what kind of charges could possibly be brought over to them? So here we go from the National Pulse. A retired agent from Homeland Security Investigations, Jeremy Christensen, has shared information about a 2015 probe into fraud at daycare centers in Minnesota. He recounted how a team consisting of 20 federal agents and officials from the State Department of Human Services examined claims that Somali migrants were operating sham daycare facilities involving fabricated invoices, non-existent enrollees, and vacant buildings. Never, not one of the daycares I served warrants on, not one person was ever present. Just empty buildings, stacks of invoices, and student records of people that our surveillance showed never went there, Christensen explained to Minnesota's Alpha News. After several months of effort, Christensen stated that the Obama-era probe suddenly vanished without explanation. All of a sudden, it just evaporated, just went away into thin air. No idea what ever happened with the case, he added. This older case has gained renewed attention in light of a recent fraud controversy in Minnesota involving accusations that groups of Somalis misused millions in state funds allocated for childcare programs. Citizen journalist Nick Shirley posted a video online depicting multiple daycare centers that appeared inactive despite receiving significant government payments. One facility, the Quality Leering Center, allegedly obtained $4 million in public funds while remaining closed, even though it claimed to be operational. FBI Director Kash Patel announced that more staff and resources have been assigned to Minnesota to examine these claims. The FBI believes this is just the tip of a very large iceberg. We will continue to follow the money and protect children, and this investigation very much remains ongoing, Patel stated on X. He mentioned that certain individuals involved are being forwarded to immigration authorities for possible denaturalization and deportation actions. So there is that, guys, once again, from thenationalpulse.com. There's an 11-minute video on this. We'll go ahead and watch this here from Liz Collin Reports on Alpha News. Let's see what they have to say.
The untold story of Minnesota fraud from someone who worked to fight it. The politics and roadblocks at play from a special agent who witnessed it firsthand. Next. Jeremy Christensen is my guest. Jeremy, good to see you. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me, Liz.
Before retiring a few years ago, you worked as a Homeland Security Investigations Agent, that's HSI, an air marshal, a police officer in Minnesota, so we know that you have many years of public service, which we are very thankful for. Somali fraud, though, has been making national headlines recently, but in so many ways, this is hardly anything new for someone like yourself. Take us back 10 years ago. Talk about what did you experience back then, and what did you see for yourself?
I was an HSI agent for 16 years in my 30-year law enforcement career. Back around 2015-ish, I would have to look at my reports to see the exact dates, but a case landed on my desk one day from my supervisor, basically advised me that the state was running a fraud case regarding daycare fraud in Minneapolis through Health and Human Services, or Department of Human Services, and they had a task force put together, and they wanted HSI to participate based on our money skills and our immigration skills and so forth like that. So I was advised to start attending the planning meetings they were having with this task force. So over the next several weeks, months, I attended upwards of 3, I believe, planning meetings with this task force of about 20 personnel of various law enforcement agencies, the Health and Human Services, BCA, St. Paul PD, Minneapolis PD, and it was all revolving around fraudulent daycares. They were setting up sham daycares, fake bills, fake students, or just enrolling students that never came, which just all fake daycares. That's the easiest way to explain it. And then over the next several months, we executed several search warrants throughout South Minneapolis, Lake Street, and different areas at these daycares. Never, now one of the daycares I served warrants on, not one person was ever present. Just empty buildings, stacks of invoices and student records of people that our surveillance showed never went there. Nobody ever came in and out of these daycares. It was just completely empty from my experience. Never was occupied daycare. And like I said, we worked that for 3-4 months. I was assigned that case just as a support person to assist with anything needing as far as financial experiences we have with HSI and our immigration authorities and ability to pull records and stuff like that. And ultimately, the task force just kind of went away. Not sure whatever happened to it. The meetings, I would get email notices when their next planning meeting, what we're going to do next, and all of a sudden it just evaporated. Just went away into thin air. No idea whatever happened with the case.
I know as part of this, you also were documenting cash flying out of the Minneapolis-St. Paul International Airport. And I wanted to speak more to that piece of things as we've been hearing a lot more about that. Many people in law enforcement backing up what recently a former TSA agent told us, but watching 2 Somali men fly out of the Minneapolis-St. Paul International Airport with millions of dollars almost every week. she talked about how that was common. And also, we've heard from others who talk about that was actually part of their training back then, 10 years ago. Recently, a former TSA agent wrote in a letter, he said about how his training officer said it was legal, nothing out of the ordinary. He also wrote to us to say that his training officers said, quote, the two men are runners in which they ship U.S. currency overseas, and it's money obtained from daycare centers. So you have this daycare fraud that still bothers you. And I know you also want to speak to these millions of dollars of cash that you documented leaving the country as well, Jeremy.
Yes, exactly. So simultaneously, like I said, as this daycare fraud case was going, we were simultaneously, and again, that's why we would be brought in for this, because we, under HSI, under our customs authorities, we are the lead investigative agency when it comes to bulk cash smuggling. HSI is the lead, and that's one of our primary missions, is to combat bulk cash smuggling. So we have extensive experience in training in bulk cash smuggling. And we do have agents assigned to the airport. They still do. That's one of our missions, is we investigate criminal activity at the customs port at the airport. So our agents at the airport ultimately opened up a case because they were getting these referrals, as your previous guest explained, all this cash going through. So we were stopping and investigating persons leaving the country with this money. And yes, they were declaring it. They weren't hiding the money. They weren't secreting it in luggage. They were declaring it. They were registered money service business couriers. However, our argument at the time and why we kept the case going, and I say we as an HSI, we really thought knew it was, common sense was telling us this money was coming from nefarious sources, from fraud. And you can do everything legal, but if the currency you're carrying is from an illegal source, well, i.e. the drug smuggling, human smuggling, illegal counterfeiting goods, whatever, if you have illegal money, that money is illegal and subject to seizure. So we kept the case open for months and months, and every time we would get called from the TSA, we would respond to the airport. We would document the case. Who was taking the money out, how much money, that it was declared. Even called personally, I did myself call the U.S. Attorney's Office and try to get a criminal referral for bulk cash smuggling, explaining, I believe this is nefarious money. It's going out. It's from illegitimate sources. And I was politely told, no, and they're doing everything legal. They're money couriers and they're registered, either with FinCEN or the state. And I'm like, nah, I don't buy it. Illegal money is still illegal money. But no, we just documented it for years. And like I said, I don't know the totality of the documentation because I only responded, I believe, 3 times myself personally. But our agents responded numerous times to the airport for these calls, and we documented it all. So there are documents out there relating to this, and they just need to be exposed.
And no charges obviously ever came of any of this.
Not that I'm aware of. I personally never, other than a few search warrants like I went on, never went on any arrest warrants. Never seen any charges come through our office for bulk cash smuggling. Just nothing. Absolutely nothing.
Unbelievable. Unfortunately, it's not just daycare center fraud. It seems almost like this formula for fraud, Jeremy. Fake business locations, fake websites, fake Google reviews. Now, all kinds of government programs and fraudulent services seem to be involved. We're talking about billions of dollars in fraud at this point. But given all your experience and all the investigations that you've been involved with, does any of this surprise you?
No, absolutely not. As I said, just so people understand, like I said, I was a local police officer for 10 years in Minnesota. Spent 4 years as a federal air marshal and 16 as a special agent with HSI. And in my 16 years as a special agent with HSI, I presented multiple immigration fraud cases where persons had lied, cheated, misconstrued information on immigration applications. And in my experience, in my personal experience, I never once had one case accepted for prosecution for immigration fraud from the U.S. Attorney's Office. Not one. And I presented some pretty damning cases that involve people deaths, circumstances where homicides were involved, circumstances where children were killed. And not one time was ever a case prosecuted. Not once.
On that note, through your work with Immigration, Customs Enforcement, ICE, unlike state authorities, the U.S. Attorney's Office has convicted dozens of criminals involved in fraud in Minnesota. 90% of those at this point convicted are Somali. So I wanted to ask you about this. Is it a fact or just a phobia here to say that there's some kind of connection?
Me personally, 100% have been by Somali. I've never worked, and I've worked gangs. I've worked Hispanic gangs. I've worked Oh, I've worked work site investigations. So I've worked all different types of cases in my life, different groups, and never have I seen anything but the fraud coming out of the Somali community. It's just unbelievable.
And there's one specific case in the Somali community that I know you wanted to highlight.
There was an incident, I can't even remember the exact year off the top of my head, involving an imam that traveled to Minneapolis. And in his travels, we discovered that he didn't have his paperwork up to date with USCIS. And part of being a non-citizen and being under the purview of immigration law in the United States, you have to follow certain rules. You have to keep your addresses up to date. You got to keep, you got to make sure you file your taxes. You can't be a public charge. You have all these requirements. Well, it became known to us through a missing persons case with a missing young female juvenile that this imam may have some activity involving this young female. Ultimately, I did find that imam. I did arrest him for not having current documentation current with USCIS. And ultimately, that case, I was one of the few times in my career I was actually told to unarrest somebody. We had him in custody for 2 days. I had filed immigration charges, civil, administrative immigration charges against him, not criminal, but due process was done. There was an administrative complaint filed, an administrative warrant, all that. He was set up for immigration court. And the political storm that followed from arresting an imam in the Somali community got so intense that I was told from the top of our administration that we need to cancel that notice to appear, what is a charging document in immigration court, and release him from custody. And I have serious concerns about his intentions in the Minneapolis community. This was not a thing going after him for an imam. This was public safety dealing with young juvenile females. And I won't get into specifics on that, but hopefully your listeners can understand what I'm talking about with that.
There's also serious concerns, it sounds like, with what's gone on with ICE operations ongoing in the Twin Cities. So we know only 7 out of 87 Minnesota counties cooperate with ICE. What do you think about what's gone on here just in the last month or so? You have the Minnesota Star Tribune publishing the location of ICE operations throughout the state, almost bragging about it. And then just speaking about your past experience and your perspective in all of this, Jeremy.
For the state, especially the Attorney General, to come out with his opinion regarding 287G not being illegal in Minnesota, he needs to understand that there was a time in my career where the state of Minnesota participated in the 287G program. The State Patrol at one time and the BCA were active participants in the 287G program. So I think it's kind of hypocritical that now it's not acceptable when at one time the state was actively participating in it.
Jeremy Christensen, thank you so much for speaking up.
All right, guys, so there it is once again from the National Pulse. The clip, again, was from Alpha News. It was Liz Collin Reports. And yeah, again, guys, this whole situation with the fraud in Minnesota is just absolutely exploding, and it's really good to see the story get national attention. It's been getting national attention now every single day, and I look forward to not only the prosecutions, and those are ongoing, of the actual individuals involved in the fraud, but honestly, the people that looked the other way and allowed this to happen in the state of Minnesota, up to and including the governor, need to be held accountable. So there it is. I'll keep you guys updated in that vein. Next one here from the Gateway Pundit, not just Minnesota. Elon Musk reacts as internet sleuth sound the alarm in Washington state. Hundreds of Somali-run childcare centers allegedly lack physical addresses, which, if you're actually a childcare center, you kind of need a physical address, right? So the sprawling fraud scandal tied to taxpayer-funded childcare and welfare programs is no longer confined to just Minnesota. New evidence suggests the same red flags are now flashing in Washington state, another super blue area where hundreds of Somali-run childcare centers allegedly operate without even listing a physical address. The Gateway Pundit previously reported on independent journalist Nick Shirley and his explosive investigation into alleged large-scale fraud involving Somali-run daycare centers in Minnesota. Shirley shared clips from his reporting on X, including footage of a childcare facility that claimed to serve 102 children, yet appeared completely empty before staff abruptly slammed the door in his face. Shirley released the full 42-minute video of his investigation, noting we uncovered over $110 million in one day, liked and shared around like wildfire, and that's exactly what ended up happening. Internet researcher Kristen Mag posted findings on X showing that according to a Washington state government database, hundreds of childcare centers listing Somali as their primary language do not include a physical street address. There are 539 childcare centers in Washington state that list Somali as the primary language. Most don't even give a street address, Mag wrote. I don't know how many of these are submitting fraudulent claims for state grants and subsidies, but I have a strong hunch the number is not zero. Mag demonstrated the issue in a video, scrolling through the official database and highlighting missing address fields. She noted that Washington state lists a total of 5,046 childcare centers, meaning more than 10% list Somali as the primary language, with a heavy concentration in the Seattle-Tacoma in western Washington region. Clarification, 5046 is the total number, or 5,046 is the total number of childcare centers participating in the Early Achievers State Ratings Program. Care providers must be participating in Early Achievers to be eligible for state subsidies and grants, she added. Tech entrepreneur Elon Musk weighed in on the Washington findings, replying on X, they are fraud-maxing this exploit. So there it is, once again, guys, from thegatewaypundit.com. Washington State is another area where this stuff seems to be going on. And next, Ohio from Zero Hedge. Citizen journalist descends on Ohio and immediately finds first signs of potentially massive Somali fraud. The Nick Shirley effect has begun, with Muckraker founder Anthony Rubin on the ground in Columbus, Ohio, home to the second largest Somali community in the U.S., investigating daycare centers. This development comes less than a day after Ohio attorney Mehek Cook said federal investigators are examining allegations that elements within Ohio's Somali community defrauded millions of dollars from the state's Medicaid system. The first Somali-affiliated daycare facility that we knocked on after landing in Columbus, Ohio, totally did not answer, Rubin wrote on X, alongside a video showing the daycare center, Great Minds Learning Academy. Rubin continued, a neighbor across the street told us, I've never seen anybody come out of the building or go into the building. On Sunday, Breitbart News published an interview with Ohio attorney Mehek Cook, who alleges that members of the Somali community in Ohio have defrauded millions of dollars from the state's Medicaid program. She said that authorities at the highest levels are investigating what is happening in Ohio. Rubin's on-the-ground reporting comes as tech bros have pitched a grant funding program to unlock tens of investigative journalists to cover widespread fraud in Democrat-run states. The idea follows Shirley's investigation into Somali-linked daycare fraud in Minneapolis, which shocked the nation over the weekend with an investigative video that has garnered 125 million views. We assess that public sentiment toward Doge could reverse after the Democrat Party's propaganda machine vilified the effort this year, even as evidence of fraud, waste, and abuse was plainly visible. As on-the-ground reporting expands in corrupt blue states, the scale of the alleged fraud is likely to broaden, increasing the likelihood of a renewed push of Doge. So there it is, guys, once again, from ZeroHedge.com. And again, just these fraud stories are just coming out of the woodwork, guys. It seems to be like the biggest topic lately in the news, which I'm glad, because this stuff needs to be stopped. Who knows how many billions of dollars have just been completely and utterly stolen from the American people with this nonsense. Honestly, when you combine all the states that this is probably happening in, it probably amounts to at least 50 billion, if I had to guess, right? Because we're almost at $10 billion when it comes to just one state. There's more than 10 super blue states in the country where this stuff is probably occurring on a regular basis, so yeah, my guess is like $50 billion has probably been stolen due to this type of fraud over the past 20 or so years. Anyways, moving on to the next one here from Daily Wire. Trump's ICE director blames sanctuary laws for Minnesota fraud. And certainly the sanctuary laws are one of the reasons why these people are even here in the first place, to be able to commit this type of fraud. So here we go. President Donald Trump's Immigration and Customs Enforcement chief placed blame squarely on sanctuary laws for Minnesota's fraud scandal. Acting ICE Director Todd Lyons told Fox and Friends Tuesday that sanctuary laws in cities like Minneapolis, which prevent local authorities from contacting or working with federal immigration agents, have provided a safe haven for fraudsters. Earlier this month, federal authorities revealed that at least $9 billion in taxpayer funds may have been stolen as part of a massive fraud campaign that's largely been tied to Minnesota's Somali community. The fraudsters allegedly funneled cash from state welfare programs through fake nonprofits and shell companies back to Somalia, and even Somali terrorist group Al-Shabaab, City Journal reported last month. There's always a tie when it comes to sanctuary jurisdictions where you can hide in plain sight. You see a lot of these fraudsters use a lot of sanctuary rules and sanctuary protections to enact in criminal fraud, just like this Lyons said. Homeland Security Investigations agents conducted door-to-door inspections in Minneapolis on Monday, targeting suspected fraud sites. It comes after independent journalist Nick Shirley posted a now viral 42-minute video last week alleging that numerous daycare and learning centers in the area had no children on site despite receiving millions of dollars in taxpayer funding. We've been on the ground for so long looking into these states that are conducting these type of material fraud. And when Homeland Security Investigations goes into these businesses, there is criminal activity when it comes to labor trafficking, child trafficking, human exploitation, and that's what we're looking at up there in Minnesota. And you'll always come back to these sanctuary jurisdictions where you'll find them hiding in plain sight and using those sanctuary protections to employ not only illegal aliens, but to conduct criminal fraud, just like you're seeing right now, he said. The Trump administration sued Minnesota in September over sanctuary policies in the state, with Attorney General Pam Bondi accusing the state of allowing illegal immigrants to circumvent the legal process. Bondi is also looking into Minnesota's fraud scandal, saying on X Monday that the feds have charged 98 individuals and that 85 of them are Somali descent, or are of Somali descent. We have more prosecutions coming. Buckle up, lawmakers, Bondi said. And then, of course, here's the clip where this is being discussed. Here we go.
So, Lawrence, what we're seeing is there's always a tie when it comes to sanctuary jurisdictions where you can hide in plain sight. You see a lot of these fraudsters use a lot of the sanctuary rules and sanctuary protections to, enact criminal fraud just like this. Secretary Noem has had us up in Minnesota. We had Operation Twin Shield with the FBI, CIS, and Homeland Security Investigations. We were in September and November. We've been on the ground for so long looking into these states that are conducting these type of material fraud. And when Homeland Security Investigations goes into these businesses, there is criminal activity when it comes to labor trafficking, child trafficking, human exploitation. And that's what we're looking at up there in Minnesota. And you always come back to these sanctuary jurisdictions where you'll find them, like, again, hiding in plain sight and using those sanctuary protections to employ, not only illegal aliens, but conduct criminal fraud just like you're seeing right now.
All right, guys, so there it is. Once again, from DailyWire.com, even more on the fraud story. And indeed, there's a reason this stuff is happening in very blue states, and it's because they have these sanctuary policies that allow so many illegal aliens to come in, and also seems to just allow for extremely inflated amount of regular immigration. And when you bring an unbelievable amount of people from places like Somalia, then this is what ends up happening. Next one here from Breitbart. Latvian nationals here illegally arrested for alleged $14 million gift card fraud. So even people from Latvia, apparently you need to be careful about. From Breitbart, Latvian nationals in the United States illegally were arrested in Texas for running an alleged $14 million gift card fraud scheme throughout several states. All three men allegedly illegally migrated to the United States from Eastern Europe and had been stealing gift cards from roughly 10 stores a day, 7 days a week, going back to May of this year. The card is removed, and then the material on the back that covers up the numbers to transfer anything or activate the card is then removed so that they can see it, FCIC Director Adam Colby said. The numbers that are on the card are then programmed into another program that the criminals are using, which will now monitor that card. The alleged scammers would then reassemble the cards to appear new before placing them back on the shelves for someone to buy so they could collect the money at purchase. As soon as it is activated and money placed onto that card, the criminals are now aware of it, but they now have the ability to transfer the money off of that card and onto another card where it is then cashed out or used to buy high-end merchandise, said Colby. The Texas Financial Crimes Intelligence Center arrested Christians Petroviskis, Romans Kubrevics, and Nermans Ulevikas for their alleged involvement in the scheme, per Fox News. All three suspects were reportedly in the United States illegally. At the time of their arrest, authorities allegedly found more than 400 gift cards on them. Authorities said the trio targeted stores in multiple cities, including Dallas, Houston, and San Antonio, noted Fox News. So there it is, a different type of fraud from different nationals, this time Latvian nationals rather than Somali nationals, ripping off gift cards. And next one here comes from the National Pulse. Another illegal immigrant trucker charged after triple killing. Some more quote-unquote cultural enrichment here. El Haji Karamoko Utara, a 58-year-old Maryland resident originally from the Ivory Coast, is facing 3 counts of involuntary manslaughter following a fatal crash on Interstate 81 in Virginia that killed 3 people, including a toddler. According to authorities, Awatara was driving a tractor trailer that left the roadway and struck a minivan. 6 people from the minivan were transported to a nearby hospital. 3 later died from their injuries. 3 others survived. Awatara was initially charged with reckless driving, but prosecutors have since upgraded the charges to involuntary manslaughter. The Roanoke County Sheriff's Office identified him as a resident of Montgomery Village, Maryland. A federal law enforcement source told Fox News that Awatara entered the United States illegally in the 1990s, later obtained a green card, and eventually became a naturalized U.S. citizen. The crash has renewed attention on commercial driver's licensing standards and enforcement, particularly as they relate to vetting, training, and language proficiency. Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy has made trucking safety a central focus of the Department of Transportation, citing concerns about unqualified illegal immigrant drivers operating commercial vehicles. We're going to use every resource, every tool that we have at DOT to make sure that we have the right people on our road that are well-qualified, well-licensed, that are proficient in the English language to make sure we're maximizing safety, Duffy said. Earlier this month, Duffy announced that California revoked approximately 17,000 non-domiciled commercial driver's licenses that were issued without proper federal vetting. The DOT has also ordered the closure of roughly 3,000 trucking schools nationwide after investigations found widespread violations of federal training standards, including falsified records and inadequate instruction. Thousands of additional schools have been warned they could lose certification if they fail to comply. The department has also warned several states that they could lose federal transportation funding for failing to enforce English language proficiency requirements for commercial drivers. California has already filed a lawsuit against the federal government over withheld funds tied to those rules. Let's really hope that California ends up losing that ridiculous lawsuit. But there it is, guys, once again from the nationalpulse.com. Yet again, we have somebody that probably should not have been in the country in the first place, killing people in an accident because they were improperly given a CDL. So there it is once again, guys, from the National Pulse. More on deportation, the border situation, immigration, so on and so forth from the Epoch Times. DHS blocked from ending deportation protection for South Sudanese. So here we go, yet another ridiculous ruling from a ridiculous judge, as we like to say. A federal judge on Tuesday ordered the Department of Homeland Security to halt its plan to scrap deportation protections for South Sudanese nationals who are living in the United States. Boston-based U.S. District Judge Angel Kelly granted an emergency request by South Sudanese nationals and an immigrant rights group to extend the temporary protected status that is due to end next week. Earlier this year, the Department of Homeland Security published a notice indicating that TPS for South Sudanese would be terminated on January 5th, 2026, meaning that any nationals living in the United States under that status need to leave before then or face immigration enforcement efforts. Kelly issued the order after 4 nationals from South Sudan, along with African Communities Together, a nonprofit group, sued the Trump administration. The lawsuit alleged that the DHS action was unlawful and exposed them to being deported to a country facing humanitarian crises. The judge issued an administrative stay on December 30th, temporarily voiding the termination policy pending further litigation. She said that allowing it to take effect before the courts had time to consider the merits would result in an immediate impact on the South Sudanese nationals, stripping current beneficiaries of lawful status, which could imminently result in their deportation. Further, if their TPS expires and is eventually restored following a full consideration of the merits, any gap in immigration status for South Sudanese nationals could result in ineligibility for future relief, Kelly wrote. About 232 South Sudanese nationals have found refuge in the United States under TPS, and another 73 have pending applications for that same protection, according to the lawsuit. In the notice, DHS Secretary Kristi Noem said that following a review of conditions in South Sudan, it no longer continues to meet the conditions for the designation, saying that a civil war in the African nation that erupted after it gained independence from Sudan in 2011 does not pose a serious threat to the personal safety of returning South Sudanese nationals. The United States began designating South Sudan for TPS in 2011. TPS is a humanitarian program offered by DHS that allows nationals of selected countries experiencing armed conflict, natural disasters, or other extraordinary conditions to remain in the United States on a temporary basis and with work authorization. Under the Biden regime, TPS was expanded to cover hundreds of thousands of people who came to the U.S. from Ukraine, Afghanistan, Venezuela, Haiti, and several other countries. But Noem's department has moved to end temporary protections to foreign nationals from countries including Syria, Venezuela, Haiti, Cuba, and Nicaragua. Earlier this month, DHS announced it would be ending TPS for Ethiopian nationals living in the United States by February 13, 2026. As it has in other TPS termination announcements, DHS suggested that Ethiopian nationals who are currently residing in the country under the program should self-deport using the agency's CBP Home app to receive a cash bonus. Aside from the TPS terminations, the Trump administration has also expanded travel restrictions and bans on nationals coming into the U.S. from a number of countries. An order signed by President Donald Trump on December 16th added full restrictions to South Sudan and 4 other countries, along with continuing full restrictions for 12 high-risk nations. So there it is, guys, once again from the from the EpicTimes.com. Honestly, these judges are just completely and utterly insane. If they had their way, it wouldn't be temporary protected status, it would be permanent protected status. That's really what they want. So another activist in black robes, basically being the biggest thorn in the Trump administration's side as humanly possible. Next one here from Daily Caller. Trump DOJ sues state giving illegal immigrants massive in-state tuition breaks. The Department of Justice has filed a lawsuit accusing Virginia of unlawfully granting illegal aliens in-state resident discounts on college tuition. The state's education code classifies illegal immigrants as Virginia residents, qualifying them for reduced in-state tuition costs, the lawsuit claims. This policy, therefore, allows illegals to access benefits not available to most other Americans, making it not only wrong but illegal, the DOJ stated. Federal law prohibits states from providing aliens who are not lawfully present in the United States with any post-secondary education benefit that is denied to U.S. citizens, the court documents read. There are no exceptions. Virginia violates it nonetheless. This court should put an end to this and permanently enjoin the enforcement of provisions of the Virginia Education Code that directly conflict with federal immigration law. The classification means illegal immigrants are able to pay nearly $40,000 less than Americans who reside in another state. In the 2025 to 2026 school year, the University of Virginia charged in-state students $23,897 in undergraduate tuition, while out-of-state students paid $62,923, according to U.S. News and World Report. Federal immigration law asserts that an alien who is not lawfully present in the United States shall not be eligible on the basis of residence within a state for any post-secondary education benefit unless a citizen or national of the United States is eligible for such a benefit, without regard to whether the citizen or national is such a resident as cited in the lawsuit. The Trump administration has sued several states already over similar laws giving benefits to illegals over American citizens. In June, Texas even teamed up with the DOJ to defeat its own law allowing illegal immigrants to receive in-state tuition costs in the red state. In February, President Donald Trump signed an executive order calling on agencies to ensure no taxpayer-funded benefits go to unqualified aliens. The order included mention of preventing states from using taxpayer funds from subsidizing illegals and attempting to hinder deportation efforts. The federal government in July ended a Clinton-era rule that allowed illegal immigrants to access taxpayer funds for technical and career schools, the Daily Caller News Foundation reported exclusively. So, awesome stuff there once again, guys, from dailycaller.com, and of course, wishing the Trump DOJ all the luck in the world on this lawsuit. Seems to me like it's pretty cut and dry. I mean, the law says what it freaking says, so unless this ends up in front of a foaming at the mouth Marxist idiotic judge, so-called judge, you can put quotations on a lot of these judges, then I think they'll do just fine. But maybe, just maybe, it ends up in front of a foaming at the mouth Marxist ass clown judge, in which case it'll probably just take the Trump administration a little bit longer because they'll have to appeal it a couple times to win. But there it is once again, guys, from Daily Caller. I'll keep you guys updated on that. Next one here from Zero Hedge. Feds charge Mexican American with trying to arm ISIS via undercover FBI agent. The FBI has arrested a 21-year-old Texas resident and charged him with attempting to provide material support to a foreign terrorist organization, namely ISIS. Depending on their level of faith in domestic counter-terror enforcement, some observers will applaud the news unquestioningly, while others may wonder if it's another situation where the man in handcuffs wouldn't have progressed to criminal action without police encouragement and assistance. That man in custody and facing up to 20 years in federal prison is John Michael Garza, a 21-year-old resident of Midlothian, Texas, a town about 25 miles southwest of Dallas. As is so often the case when the feds announce the foiling of a U.S.-based terrorist plot, Garza didn't actually get in touch with ISIS, but was instead maneuvered into engaging with undercover police and federal agents posing as terrorists. Garza's father tells NBC5 that his son has been diagnosed with a neurological disorder and never expressed pro-ISIS sentiments. He says authorities preyed on his impaired son, pushing him to take actions he'd never have taken of his own volition. Garza was arrested last week, but the case began in mid-October when a New York police employee, as the DOJ release describes the person, came across Garza's social media account and noted that he followed several pro-ISIS accounts and commented on one post by such an account. Next, that NYPD undercover contacted Garza via social media. After describing himself as a Mexican-American in Texas, Garza engaged with the undercover throughout November and December. He said he ascribed to ISIS's philosophy and sent the undercover various official ISIS media releases. Garza also sent the undercover person small amounts of cryptocurrency, allegedly with the understanding that he was helping ISIS buy weapons and other supplies, and allegedly sent a video of a suicide vehicle bombing and another giving instructions on creating explosives. He's also alleged to have explained how to mix explosive ingredients and surround them with nails. Next, the FBI says Garza said he intended to buy bomb components and agreed to meet with another person whom he believed to be an ISIS follower too. That meeting with an undercover FBI agent took place on Monday, December 22nd, with Garza allegedly handing over what the FBI describes as several explosive components. The release doesn't specify if that was more than, say, nails in a PVC pipe. FBI Director Kash Patel proclaimed victory, saying, quote, "Today's announcement underscores the FBI's commitment to combating terrorism and demonstrates our continuous work to disrupt and thwart terrorist plots against the American public. Let this serve as a warning to those who plan to conduct attacks against the United States on behalf of terrorist organizations. You will be brought to justice." More details should come out with a December 30th probable cause and detention hearing at the U.S. District Court for Northern Texas. While Garza may have someday taken deadly action on his own, for now, the pivotal roles played by undercover NYPD and FBI agents can't help make us wonder if the case can be summed up with this classic meme: FBI foils FBI terror plot. I don't know, guys. I'm not really with Zero Hedge on this one. From this guy's actions and his communication with the undercover law enforcement, I'd say he's guilty as hell. So there is that, guys, once again, from ZeroHedge.com. And of course, I'll keep you guys updated if any other interesting details end up coming out about this story. Next one here from the Gateway Pundit: potential conflict of interest rocks Charlie Kirk murder case. Utah prosecutor's relative was in the crowd during the assassination, and the defense demands disqualification. So, newly revealed court documents in the prosecution of Tyler Robinson, the 22-year-old accused of assassinating conservative icon Charlie Kirk, have exposed a potential conflict of interest within the Utah County Attorney's Office. Defense attorneys are pushing to boot the entire prosecution team, citing personal ties to the crime scene. Charlie Kirk, the 31-year-old co-founder of Turning Point USA, was killed September 10th while addressing a massive crowd of thousands at Utah Valley University during his American Comeback Tour. The conflict centers on an unnamed prosecutor whose family member, a student, was present at the event just 85 feet from Kirk when he was killed. According to court filings, which were made in October but released to the public on Monday, the relative texted the prosecutor in a group chat amid the pandemonium: "Someone got shot," followed by "I'm okay, everyone is inside." The prosecutor immediately shared these messages with Utah County Attorney Jeffrey Gray while both were attending a separate presentation. Later, the prosecutor and an investigator visited the campus to pinpoint the relative's exact location and learned that the family member had abandoned their backpack while fleeing the scene. Robinson's defense team, led by attorney Richard Novak, argues that this personal connection compromises the entire six-member prosecution team. In a motion filed to disqualify the office, Novak highlighted the issue during a closed-door hearing on October 24th, telling Judge Tony Graff, "The Utah County attorneys have advised us that a family member of one of the attorneys was present at the incident at which Mr. Kirk was shot and killed." Novak added that law enforcement was dispatched to ensure the relative's safety due to their proximity to the shooting. The prosecution informed the defense on October 1st that the relative wouldn't be called as a witness and claimed no conflict existed, but Novak insists that it taints the case. Robinson, who allegedly fired the single fatal shot, faces a slew of felony charges, including aggravated murder, discharge of a firearm causing serious bodily injury, obstruction of justice, 2 counts of witness tampering, and commission of a violent offense in the presence of a child. If convicted, Robinson could face Utah's infamous firing squad, as it is one of only 5 states still allowing this method of execution. So there is that, guys, once again from thegatewaypundit.com. Honestly, sounds like a desperate grasp at straws for the defense here. I really don't think it matters that one of the prosecutor's family members was in the crowd that day. I don't know if anybody else, if anybody out there in live chat knows about these rules or anything like that. Like, have you ever seen a case in which something like that caused the disqualification of a prosecutor? Let me know, but I don't know. It just sounds kind of silly to me. Not quite sure how that's supposed to, taint a prosecutor's office. So there it is, guys. Once again from thegatewaypundit.com. And honestly, I don't see how like this changes any of the evidence either. Like, we got this guy on DNA evidence on the rifle itself. Like, I don't understand how a potential conflict of interest that they just laid out here changes any of that either. So there it is. Next one here from the Epic Times. Pipe bomb suspect's attorneys say he has OCD, autism, in their request not to detain. So, again, a criminal defense here grasping at straws, in my opinion. The attorneys for Brian Cole Jr., who allegedly planted pipe bombs before the events of January 6, 2021, are asking a court to allow their client to avoid detention before his expected trial. In a filing on December 30th, they said that various factors weighed in favor of releasing Cole. Among them were his lack of criminal history, as well as his diagnosis with obsessive-compulsive disorder and autism spectrum disorder level 1. A resident of Woodbridge, Virginia, Cole has been detained at the Rappahannock Regional Jail and was recently given permission to see mental health professionals. His attorneys also submitted multiple character reference letters with redacted names. One whose signatory identifies as a business associate of Cole's father describes Cole's quote-unquote peaceful nature. Yeah, peaceful nature, the guy that planted pipe bombs. Over the years of my interactions with him, I have never seen him emotionally angry, upset, or even frustrated, the letter reads. Cole's facing decades of prison for allegedly violating federal law related to the attempted use and transportation of an explosive device. His attorney's most recent filing came just before an anticipated hearing on December 30th in Washington. It states that Cole has submitted to house arrest and has an ankle monitor, as well as unannounced visits by pretrial services. He has no criminal history, and there is zero evidence to suggest he will flee. Each factor supports release with conditions that will reasonably assure Mr. Cole's appearance, as well as the safety of the community, the attorneys said. The Justice Department has requested pretrial detention for Cole, stating in a court filing on December 28th that he confessed to placing pipe bombs near the headquarters of the Democratic and Republican parties. By his own admission, the defendant committed these chilling acts because he was unhappy with the response of political leaders on both sides of the political aisle to questions raised about the results of the 2020 election, and something just snapped, the filing quote-unquote reads. Cole's attorneys argued that whether he was guilty was wholly irrelevant to his bail proceeding. They also accused the Justice Department of violating a bar on disclosing the existence of confessions. They pointed to Jeanine Pirro, U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia, stating on Facebook that Cole confessed. Cole allegedly placed the bombs on January 5th, 2021, just hours before Congress was set to certify the results of the 2020 presidential election. According to the Justice Department, Cole denied that his actions were directed toward Congress or its proceedings. The defendant felt that the people up top, including people on both sides, public figures, should not ignore people's grievances or call them conspiracy theorists, bad people, Nazis, or fascists, the government's brief said. Instead, if people feel that their votes are like just being thrown away, then at the very least someone should address it. In a subsequent filing on December 29th, Cole's attorneys requested a long list of materials, including statements Cole made that were either tape recorded or summarized in officers' notes. On December 30th, his attorney said that no property was damaged in relation to the alleged conduct and that no person was harmed. The hearing is expected nearly 5 years after the Capitol breach on January 6, 2021, which prompted congressional inquiries, multiple prosecutions under the Biden administration, and the second impeachment of President Donald Trump. According to an FBI affidavit, Cole's cell phone data indicated he was in the vicinity of the party offices around the time the bombs were placed on January 5, 2021. Financial transaction records also showed him purchasing multiple items consistent with those that were used to manufacture the pipe bombs, said the FBI special agent whose name was redacted. In its December 28th filing, the government said Cole continued to purchase bomb-making materials through mid-2022 and wiped his cell phone nearly 1,000 times. There is simply no reason to expect that the defendant, if released pending trial, will conduct himself differently than he has for the past 5 years, prosecutors said. Rather, there are substantial grounds to conclude that the defendant would continue to present an intolerable danger to the community. In another filing, Cole's attorneys indicated the government sought to postpone the detention hearing on December 30th to either January 7th or 8th, but that doing so would be illegal. Cole was arrested at the age of 30 earlier this month. He has been employed by his family's bail bonding business since he was 14. One of the character references came from an individual identifying as the property manager for the building where Cole's family business was a tenant. Another came from someone stating that Cole was his step-grandson. The former said the charges against Cole seem totally out of character from the Brian Cole Jr. that I have observed over many years. So there it is, guys, once again from the EpicTimes.com. And of course, I will keep you guys updated on the pipe bombers trial as we move forward. Honestly, I think it's a horrible idea to allow this guy, to not be detained until his trial. I don't understand how criminal justice lawyers that do these types of things, trying to get really dangerous people let off the hook and whatnot. How do these people freaking live with themselves, man? And how do you choose that job as well? I'm going to be the guy that tries to get criminals off, right? It's just it's wild to me. Kim, Iowa, out there with the shades. Thank you very much for the shades, Kim, Iowa, as always. Much appreciated. Let's go ahead and move on to the next story here, which comes from dailycaller.com, but not before we flip back over to pilled.net for the rest of the night, guys. We are already at that halfway mark. And, of course, looking forward to covering the rest of the news. You guys can follow us over to pilled.net using one of these links that I'm blasting out there in the live chats for you guys. And, follow us over. We have a whole lot more news to get into. We're going to play a quick clip here for Pilled, and then we'll be right back on the other end of that. See you guys in less than 60 seconds.
Pilled.net is proud to host The Breakdown, exclusively on the true home of free speech. To continue watching the show, we are here to help you over to Pilled. If you're new to the platform, just click on the welcome link. It will automatically walk you through signing up for your free account. If you already have a Pilled account, follow the link provided to take you directly to the Season Pixel stream. We are excited to have you join the Pilled family. And if you have any questions at all, just email support@pilled.net. Enjoy the rest of the breakdown with Season Pixels, exclusively on Pilled.net. Free speech lives here.
Indeed, free speech lives over at pilled.net. Follow us over, guys. We have a whole lot more news to get into, and looking forward to covering the rest. I'll see you guys on Pilled.